Hello, scholars, educators, families. Welcome back to another episode of Black Study Snacks, where we give you bite-sized knowledge for hungry, melanated minds. My name is Devon Travell, your professor of Black Studies and Entrepreneurship. And we got a good one today, folks. Episode 3 on today's podcast, we are diving into the life and legacy of a monumental figure in Black history. Someone coined as the father of Black studies. We're going to cover this person's early life, a little bit of their educational background, and their early career. Are you ready? Are your minds hungry? Well, let's get snacking. Okay, so can I be honest with y'all? We tried with all of our melanated efforts to put this into one episode. However, this person's life, this person's legacy is not bite-sized. All right, so honestly, this person is a legend in real life. So we're gonna split this into 2 separate episodes. We're still gonna keep this one bite-sized, still snack size, and it's gonna be 2 separate episodes. And if you still don't know who we're talking about, we are covering the father of Black studies, Dr. Carter G Woodson. So Dr. Woodson was born December 19th, 1875 in New Canton, Virginia. His parents, James Henry and Anne Eliza Woodson, were formerly enslaved, but his father, James, worked as a skilled carpenter. His grandparents were also enslaved in Virginia, which allowed them to maintain a little bit of family normancy and have several generations of Woodsons around. And his family knew and embodied the value of education and ownership. Here goes the story time, y'all. So in fall 1864, during the American Civil War, after being whipped for allowing his quote-unquote master or enslaver to disrespect him, James Henry Woodson escaped from Stratton Farms and ran into a cavalry of Union soldiers, which he led back to the Stratton farm. And these Union soldiers freed the Woodson family and the other families that were on that Stratton farm and whipped the owner or quote unquote master of that farm as well. Afterwards, James Henry, which is Carter G. Woodson's father, led the Union soldiers to mills and supply depots all throughout the local county. The Woodsons and many other families fought for and gained their freedom during the American Civil War. So I got a first question for y'all. If the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, January of 1863, why was the Woodson family and many other African-American families across America still enslaved, still on the plantations in 1864? Of course, y'all know I have my answer, right? But I want you to take a second, think about it, say the answer out loud if you're driving in the car, riding on the bus, or if you're watching on YouTube, enroll in our class. Please make sure you leave a comment below on why you think the Woodson family and many other families after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed were still enslaved. So I think you can answer this question in a lot of different ways, but the most popular argument is going to be what I go through right now. So the proclamation declared, and this is quotes, that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforth shall be free. So keep in mind, at this time, during the American Civil War, America as we know it is split into 2 separate nations. We have the cultural North, also known as the Union, with an economy largely built on industry, immigrant labor, and international national trade. Then we have the cultural South, also known as the Confederacy, with an economy largely built on slave labor and agriculture. So this proclamation freed all the persons held as slaves in rebellious states. And this was written by the president of the Union. So the rebellious states are only the Confederate states. But if there were no Union troops, right, if there was no one to really be there to enforce this proclamation or this policy, then the plantations operated like business as usual. In short, the Union established rules for the Confederacy to follow, but needed to enforce those rules with Union armies, Union soldiers during and after the Civil War. There's really a lot that we can unpack and talk about when it comes to this, but remember, this is a snack, not a meal. So let's get back to the life and legacy of Carter G. Woodson. So according to A Life in Black History by Jacqueline Goggin, which is a great book, goes into a lot of good details on Carter G. Woodson's life. After years of working and being free, working low-wage agricultural jobs, in 1872, the Carter parents, Carter G. Woodson's parents, and their 3 children at the time moved to West Virginia, where they would be helping to construct railroads. After 2 years in 1874, they earned enough money to purchase 21 acres of land. I'm gonna say that one more time for the people that weren't like really listening. They purchased 21 acres of land in New Canton, Virginia. Carter G. Woodson was born just 1 year later. Okay, so he's born into already a legacy of fighters, a legacy of educators, and people who believe in ownership. He's born into a family farm of 21 acres, 1 generation removed from enslavement. Despite the challenges of his time, Woodson's journey in education is nothing short of inspirational. He and his 5 siblings had to, of course, help on the farm or the family land, but 4 months out of the year, during where y'all typically take summer vacations, he attended a 1-room school taught by his 2 uncles, who were educated in schools established by the Freeman Bureau. There's a whole other course and a whole nother podcast that we can go into about the work and some of the pitfalls of the Freeman Bureau. But let's get back again to Carter G. Woodson. Carter followed his older brothers to the coal mining industry during his teenage years. Here, he would cultivate his passion for education and for history. He found a Black-owned tea shop that the coal miners would frequent during their breaks, and he would read them Black weeklies, some speeches. This really motivated him to move back with his parents and dedicate his time to formal education. He went back to Frederick Douglass High School and graduated at 20 years old. And this at the time was the only high school that would allow Black scholars in the area. He then decided to enroll in Berea College in Kentucky in 1897. While going part-time to Berea College, Woodson taught at several schools in Virginia, including teaching history at his old high school, Frederick Douglass High. Now, I have a little bit of a nerd moment. Can you imagine sitting in a history class being taught by the father of Black studies? Like, just imagine that gift, right? It'd be so cool. Maybe that's just me as a nerd, but if I could travel back in time, that is one of the time points, right? One of the plot points that I would love to experience, being taught American history from the father of Black studies himself. After graduating in spring 1903, Woodson's journey would take him to, drumroll please, the Philippines, which I don't know if any of y'all would have guessed that, but after the Spanish-American War had just ended, right, 1903, there was a lot of rebuilding that needed to happen in the Philippines, which now was under American control. So America was paying teachers $100 per month, which in today's currency would be about $2,000 per month. Pretty good study abroad gig, right? In order to go over there and teach English and the American educational practices, which Carter G. Woodson and many other Black teachers, educators, and of course, American educators took advantage of. After only 1 year, the illustrious Carter G. Woodson would become fluent in Spanish to be able to better connect with the students, and he would also be promoted to the education superintendent over the area. Being the education superintendent means he was in charge of training the other teachers how to be teachers, which, if you know what book he wrote, makes perfect sense. There, he observed and addressed educational disparities and saw firsthand how education can be used as a political tool. Both themes would definitely define his work later on. So I got a question for you, and I'm not positive if I'm going to answer this question as well. I might. We'll see. I'll probably answer it. All right. But question number 2. How do you think Carter G. Woodson's experience teaching in the Philippines impacted his view on education? All right. So again, keep in mind the context. He grew up raised by parents that were formerly enslaved, but valued heavily education. He was able to go to universities within America, some that were segregated and only for Black scholars, some that were non-segregated or integrated. And now he's in a foreign country taking the educational practices from America and implementing them into a foreign country and teaching them the language. Right, so how do you think this may have impacted his career or his view of education? Oh, okay. You dragged it out of me. I'll give you a little bit of what I'm thinking. I think he was really able to see and experience firsthand how curriculum and pedagogy, or a style of teaching, needs to change based on culture. Right? I think it was an extreme example to leave America and still be teaching American values, still be teaching the American language, and still be teaching the American way. And I think being able to see the shifts that were needed to still reach the students in the Philippines made him think about the shifts that may or may not have been needed to reach the students here in America that have a different culture. Hold on to that idea, because again, it connects to his amazing book that he wrote. If you already know what book he wrote, go ahead and drop it inside the comments. It's a good one, still relevant to this day. Unfortunately, Carter G. Woodson fell ill during his service and had to return home to recover. Once he recovered, he went right back to traveling the world and observing educational practices throughout Malaysia, Greece, Egypt, Palestine, Italy, and France. Global world traveler. But he did finally return to the United States in 1907 and began his master's degree in history at the University of Chicago. At first, he was interested in writing his thesis on the Black church. He even requested some data from the one and only W.E.B. Du Bois, but after receiving the data for whatever unknown reason, I haven't been able to figure it out yet. If you know it, let me know. He shifted his thesis to then focus away from the Black church and onto French diplomatic policies towards Germany in the 18th century. As you can tell, although he is known as the father of Black studies, he had a wide academic interest, probably from his global experience. He was for sure a true scholar. In 1908, Carter G. Woodson received his master's degree from the University of Chicago, but he did not stop there. Woodson would go on to make history by earning his PhD in, well, history. He went on to earn his PhD in history from Harvard University, becoming the second African American ever, after, of course, the great W.E.B. Du Bois, to earn a doctorate from this prestigious institution. However, we have to dive a little bit deeper into details, because it is extremely important to note that Dr. Carter G. Woodson was the first direct descendant of enslaved parents to earn his PhD from Harvard University. So that leads us to question number 3, scholars. W.E.B. Du Bois was the first African American to earn a PhD from Harvard ever. Carter G. Woodson was the first direct descendant of enslaved parents to earn a PhD from Harvard ever. Why is it important to have that distinction? Why is it important to give Carter G. Woodson that also first in his own right, in his own lane, when it comes to achieving that educational achievement from Harvard University? Go ahead and leave that inside the comments. All right. So go ahead and let me know why you think it's important. And while you think about that answer, make sure you click that like button, smash that subscribe button, and if there is another scholar, family, or parent that you think would find value in this podcast, please make sure y'all share. Now, for me, it was illegal for Carter G. Woodson's parents to read and write. Right? At that time, they were literally seen and treated as physical property. So for him to come from those parents who still somehow valued education, still somehow were able to teach their offspring, their children, the importance of education, how to read, how to write, to go from there to the most prestigious university with a terminal degree at the most prestigious university possibly in the world is literally like a superhero origin story, right? So I love that, and I think it's important that we give Carter G. Woodson, or Dr. Carter G. Woodson, his extra flowers for being the first direct descendant of enslaved Africans to graduate from Harvard University. So I know y'all are rocking with me. I know we just got into the meat of it, but it looks like we are out of time for today's episode. Thank y'all as always for tuning into Black Study Snacks, where we give you bite-sized knowledge for hungry, melanated minds. On today's episode, we introduced you or reminded you of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who was born December 19th, 1875, who taught in the Philippines after the Spanish-American War, who received his master's in history from the University of Chicago, and was the first direct descendant of enslaved Africans to earn his PhD from Harvard University. Next week, we will dive into how Dr. Carter G. Woodson started the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, wrote a book that would shake the core of the educational system, and made Negro History Week a reality. Until then, I'm your host, Devon Chevelle, creator of Black Wall Street, the board game, and I do mean your professor of Black Studies and Entrepreneurship. And make sure you keep on snacking. Peace.